Hi everybody, Canadian Trapper here. Well, it's spring here in New Brunswick and it's time for me to get the deer meat out of the freezer, and I decided to make some jerky today. So what I wanted to do is I wanted to show you how I make my jerky. My full intention the whole time this year when I got a deer was to take all the big cuts of meat, get it boned out, and to make myself some jerky. I know it's a pretty big hit in our house. It goes over bigger than the deer roasts do. So I got my dehydrator out, I got the recipe and all the ingredients for the marinade, so let me show you how I do it. Well, alright, this is pretty much all I use to make my jerky. I'll put a recipe in the link below so you'll know how much to put of each ingredient. But basically, I got a piece of meat thawed out, and what I normally do is I just take it out of the wrapper and things like that, and then I put it out here. It doesn't take long to thaw, and then I'll trim all the fat and all the silver skin off of it. But what I do try to do is this meat's still frozen and in the center, and what I will do is I use my slicer here. So I like to leave it a little bit frozen to slice it, and when I slice it you'll see why. It stays nice and solid. Sometimes I find when I use the slicer it pulls the meat in if it's not frozen. So I'll show you why I do that. And what I got here is I got my onion powder, my garlic powder, and soy sauce, Worcestershire sauce. I got a little bit of liquid smoke, salt, pepper, and then I got big Ziploc freezer bags. And what I do is I mix all my ingredients together and all my sliced meat, and I put it in a Ziploc bag to marinate, and I'll marinate this for 48 hours. And this is what it looks like. I got a couple bags here already made, and I'll flip these bags every now and then and swish them around, but you'll see that process when we get to it. So I got a couple more out here. They're starting to thaw a little bit, and then I got these ones that are still frozen, so it's kind of a process, and I got this one that's ready to go. So why don't I turn on the slicer and I will start trying to slice some of this. Hopefully it's not still too frozen, and we'll start the process. We're going to start slicing the meat. So I got a nice piece of lean meat. Like I said, I've taken all the silver skin and as much fat as I can get off of it. I mean, I still got a few grains here, but you can trim that out too once you get it sliced. And like I said, it's still kind of frozen. You can see I'm pushing my finger into it there, and it's still pretty hard. But so I've got my slicer set up here. It's about 1/4 of an inch thick is what I will do. If you don't have a slicer, don't worry about it. For years I did all my jerky, I just sliced it with a knife. But this just made my life a little bit easier. So what I'm going to do, I'll turn on my slicer. There, that's about the thickness I'm doing. That's a nice lean meat. That's about 1/4 of an inch thick. So I'll continue to slice this, and I'll show you the next step when I get to it. Alright, so I moved over into the sun here so we could see a little bit better. So this is how I slice it. So this is, like I said, about 1/4 of an inch thick. You don't want to cut this real thin, and I'll tell you why. Because as it dehydrates, you're going to see all the thin little edges are going to get really crispy. And what's going to happen is, if you cut this really thin and you dehydrate it, it's I mean, it's still going to taste good, but it's going to be really hard. I find if you leave it 1/4 of an inch thick and then you dehydrate it, like I said, I'm cutting these strips in about 1-inch strips here. When it does dehydrate, I mean, make sure you dehydrate the whole piece, but it has a tendency to have a little bit of softness still in the middle, and it doesn't get so dry and crumbly. So anyway, I'm going to continue to slice all this, and once I get it all sliced up, and I'll probably slice up this stuff here too, and once we get it all into 1-inch pieces, strips, I'll show you the next step. Okay, here we go. I got all the deer roasts all sliced up. They're all into approximately 1-inch strips by 1/4 of an inch thick. Mind you, you notice I got them in different piles here. I do have some over here that are a little bit thicker. Depends on what I'm bringing the jerky in the woods for. You know, sometimes I'm going fly fishing and stuff, and I like to have these little bits. This here's a pile of all the little odds and ends that were left over. I don't throw those away. Those go into jerky as well. Carry those in a little bag in my fly fishing vest, and gives me something to chew on when I'm out casting a fly. Anyway, so I'm going to take this meat here and I'm going to put it in a Ziploc bag, and I'll show you how I'm going to do that and how much meat I'm going to put in there, and then we're going to add all the ingredients here. One thing I did want to add as well, I use low sodium soy sauce. I find if you use stuff that's got a lot of salt in it, plus we're adding salt, it makes your jerky really salty. The other thing I want to show is I didn't waste anything. Any of the trimmings that I took off, they all went into here. That's going to go into the freezer for next year, and that'll be bait for all my boxes and anything like that. So I will make sure I make good use of that. So let's get some of this meat here, and we're going to put it in, and we'll start adding our ingredients. Alright, so I'm going to take all my meat and I'm going to put it in a Ziploc bag here. I'm going to say I probably put 5 pounds, I would say. But let's put it in here. Alright. These are extra large Ziploc bags as well. And I'll show you why I'm doing this in the sink here in a minute. So I'll probably have enough here to do 2 bags. And what I'll be doing is I'll be also doubling the recipe for each bag. So what I'm putting in here is double the recipe. Like I said, I'm going to have the amounts of the ingredients linked down below. Alright, so let me see, I guess I'm going to put my morsels in there too. Morsels on the top, put half that. Alright, so there, that's a extra large Ziploc bag, and you can see how much meat I've got in there. I don't know, 4 or 5 pounds, I guess. So I'm going to double the recipe. First thing it calls for is soy sauce. It calls for 1 cup, but I'm putting 2. And this is low sodium once again. 1. 2 cups of soy sauce for double the recipe. Next thing, the recipe calls for a ½ cup of Worcestershire, but because I'm doubling, I'm putting a full cup. Make sure you give this a good shake when you put it in too, because a lot of stuff will separate it at the bottom. And it calls for 2 cups of water, 1 cup of water, but I'm going to put 2. And for the rest of the wet ingredients, a little bit of liquid smoke. Calls for 1 teaspoon of garlic powder. I'm going to put 2. I'm a little bit generous with this. It's not an exact science, remember. So it calls for 1 teaspoon of onion powder. And I'm going to put 2 for the double recipe. One and a half teaspoons of salt. And a ½ teaspoon of pepper. Now I'm going to show you why I do this over the sink. If I did this anywhere else and this popped open, it would make a terrible mess. So I'm sealing the bag up, still leaving lots of air in the bag. And now I'm going to start mixing it together. Making sure I get everything mixed up, because I'm trying to mix up the ingredients as well as I'm trying to make sure the marinade gets around all the meat. There's nothing left frozen in the middle or any humps or anything like that. You can see why I want to do this over the sink, because if this Ziploc bag popped open like it just did, it would make a terrible mess. Seal it back up. So then what I want to do is I want to remove all the air from the bag. Just do that like this, pushing it all up. See the bubbles coming out the top. Zip the bag closed, make sure it's closed, because the next step you're going to be laying it down on its side, and if it's not closed, it'll make a mess. Alright, so you can see I've already got a couple here that I've done already. Once again, making sure that this is sealed tight, because this is going to go in the fridge for 48 hours and marinate with this marinade. Here we go. So I'm going to keep going. I'm going to put the rest of this in another bag, do the same thing again, doubling the recipe, and this is going to go in the fridge for 48 hours. And every few hours or whatever, I'll pull it out, give it a shake around, flip the bags, make sure that everything's well coated and things like that. And then after 48 hours, we're going to go to the dehydrator. So I'll see you in 48 hours. Okay, it's been 48 hours. I got my meat out of the fridge. Got all our different bags here. I got it next to the sink, because what I'm going to do is I'll open up each individual bag and I'll put it in my trays for the dehydrator. And I got my dehydrator over here. It's all set up. So I'm going to pull all these trays out, set them over here, and then we'll fill them up with meat. And then basically I'll turn it on, and we're going to start dehydrating. So let's get the meat in the trays. Alright, I got my first tray filled here. So this is where I do it. It's nice, I got the sink right here, and any of the drippings that goes off, they go down in the sink. Some guys recommend they take a piece of paper towel and just dampen these, or not dampen them, but remove the dampness off them. I like to leave it. I find it gives it extra flavor, so it takes a little longer to dehydrate, but it just seems to leave a little bit more on the meat. And you also notice I have it, all the meat is separated. You can see here, so the air can circulate around there, and the intention of dehydrating is removing all the moisture. So if two pieces of meat are touching together, you're going to notice when it comes time for them to be ready, when you pull it apart, there'll still be moisture there, so you're going to have to let it run a little longer. Anyway, so I'm going to continue to fill all these trays. I've got a whole bunch of trays here, and once I get them full, I'll turn on the dehydrator and show you what we do next. Okay, so I got all the trays full. It took 2 bags to fill all these trays. So now I'm going to turn on the dehydrator. So back here, just goes, turn it on. So this is going to give me my time that I want to select. I'm going to turn it on full blast. This one here, full, is about 165. And then I'm going to hit select, and it'll indicate the hour. I'm going to start with 8. So we're going to go up to 8 hours. 7, 8. Select and start. So after 8 hours, this will shut off, but I'm going to be around most of the day, so I'll continue to check it. And now's the hardest part of making jerky, is sitting in the house while the dehydrator's running. I'll tell you, it's going to make the house smell some nice. So in 8 hours, we'll turn the camera back on and we'll take a look and see what the jerky looks like. Well, okay everybody, it's been 8 hours. So this literally just stopped, and we're going to take a look and see what the jerky looks like. Don't be surprised if it's not done yet, though. It generally takes longer. So here's where we're at. Yeah, it's still kind of soft. You can still feel that there's moisture in it. Let's check the other drawers here. Yes, so this is going to take longer than this for sure. But it is smelling great in here, I'm telling you that. Check this drawer. So, yeah, some pieces are a little drier than others. You can see how that is, but I can tell by touching it, it's not ready yet. So let's put it back in. I'm going to give it another 4 hours. Put it for 2, 3, 4. Let's go with 5, and we'll check it at 4. Start it again. Alright, well, let's give it a little more time. Okay, it's been running an additional 4 hours. It still has some time left on the timer. We're going to take a look here and see what it looks like. And it's looking pretty good. I would say that that's just about done. Sorry for the lighting, it's not the greatest, but let's see if I can bring it under some light here. It's nice and dry. It's still a little warm. It's still got a little bit of flex to it, so I think we're good to go. So what I'm going to do now is I will clean out all these trays. Let's take a different tray here. Yeah, this is looking good. If I find any pieces that don't look like they're finished, I'll put them all in one tray. And then I'm going to take these other trays. I'll put the jerky out to dry. Or sorry, not to dry, to cool off. If I put it in a bag when it's warm, there'll be condensation. It'll build up on the inside of the bag. And then I'm going to end up with a bunch of moisture in the bag. So what I'll do is I'll set it out, and we're going to try a piece here in a bit. Man, it's been great smelling this all day in the house. So anyway, I hope you decide to give this recipe a try, and if you do and you like it, throw a comment down below, say you enjoyed it, and I wish you could try this. The other thing I want to say is I don't use any kind of nitrates or anything in my mixture, so what I do is once it's all cooled down and I do put it back in these big Ziploc freezer bags, I will chuck it in the freezer just for storage. I mean, I would hate to have one piece that maybe wasn't completely dehydrated and I missed it, and then you know, sit it on the counter in a jar and it ended up going bad and I ate it, or one of the kids ate it and got sick. So I do recommend that even once it's all done, it's cooled down, put it in a Ziploc bag and chuck it in the freezer. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Give the recipe a try, and like I said, if you do and you like the jerky, throw a comment below. So thanks for watching.